Alright, so here we're going to review of the Simgot Supermix 4. This is a 1DD, 1BA, 1 planar, 1 piezoelectric driver IEM. It retails for around $150, and let's get into this. First of all, I do want to say when it says 1 planar, I would have preferred the term being microplanar because it's not like a full planar. It is more of like a BA sized planar that they use for the treble, but it is most definitely still a planar driver, and you're going to be able to tell. Let's get into this. This was sent to me for review by Simgot, so big thank you to Simgot for sending this over. But of course that doesn't change my opinions or anything like that. So let's get into the box. Here we go. Here we have the IEMs and this little foam insert here. We have a box, inner box here. Let's take that out. My camera is deciding to no longer focus, which is really just awesome. Is there anything in here? Nope. And let's put that aside. Alright, let's take the IEMs out. And let's open up this inner box. Okay, we get a case. And in the case, we have the cable. Talk about that in a second. And the tips. And a cable tie. I'll put the case. Oh, actually, no, let's talk about the case just for real quick. It's a fine case. It's pretty generic. Doesn't even have Simgot on it. It's just a normal size case. In terms of size for pocketability, I do like the length and width, but if it was a little bit thinner, it would be nice. But overall, it's a fine case for a free include. Not anything special though. Alright, let's talk about the cable. The cable is, I'd say it's slightly above average for $150. It's not like amazing though. It's not like something incredible. I think the coating is a little bit rubbery, like a lot of other Simgot cables. But overall, it is a fine cable with no major flaws. Connectors are good. No issues at all with it. It does stay relatively straight. And for the price, you really can't complain at $150. It is 3.5 millimeter. Alright, let's put the cable to the side. You don't care about that anymore, do you? Alright, let's talk about now tips. These tips, I do have the small one also. They're just not in the bag anymore. They sounded fine, but I liked the spin fits actually a lot more than these. So I would recommend whatever tips you find to give you the best seal. I would recommend using that on the Supermix 4. Sorry for the cut, I forgot to mention build quality and comfort. Overall, it is a pretty basic resin shell with a flush 2-pin connector. I did find these actually really comfortable, above average comfort to very comfortable. I could wear these for hours on end without any discomfort or issues. In terms of build, I mean, again, it is a resin shell, but with a kind of like a plastic or maybe metal faceplate. I think it's plastic, but it's a little bit light to the touch. And also design-wise, I think they're pretty basic. It's just this shell with a random circle on it. I think they look fine. They look pretty generic, but overall look okay. This faceplate is actually gray, not black. The reason I say this is because before I got them, in pictures I saw it, they looked like the faceplate was black, but in reality when I got it, it's actually just a dark gray. I actually think it looks nice. Nicer than if it was just all black, but overall it's a pretty basic design, basic in looks, but it is very comfortable. So let's talk about the sound. Let's go bass, mids, highs here. Let's start with the bass. The bass is a little bit too emphasized. A little bit for me. Overall though, it's great quality. I'll say it for the $150 price range, it is middle of the pack, maybe a little bit above average in quality, and in terms of quantity, it's a little bit too much for me. And that's really surprising given Simgot's previous IEMs have been very, very bass light. With this one, it seems that they decided to go for a bassier, warmer type sound than their usual brighter bass light approach. I'd say the bass, it is punchy, it's got decent slam for the price, but it could use a little bit more tactility, it could be a little bit tighter. It does get a little bit of boom in the bass, not a lot. Overall, in this price range, at $150, it is excellent bass. I really do like the bass on this in terms of quality. But as I said before, quantity is a little bit too much for me. And with spin fits, actually, it decreased the quantity, not increased. So if you're thinking, oh, it's because you use spin fits, no. Actually, it decreased the amount just a little bit for me. Overall, relatively similar low. And it's still a little bit too much. But over time, I got used to the increase in bass. And, you know, mentally, just after using it for a little bit of time, I got used to the increase in bass, but it's still something to take of note. I think that the bass should be reduced a little bit. But it is great quality. Let's talk about now the mid-range. The mid-range is where I have a little bit of dissatisfaction with. Overall, for $150, the quality of the mids is still good, but I won't say it's great. It's a bit flat sounding, and it's a little bit pushed back because these do have a decent amount of treble. Not in a bad way, we'll talk about that in a second. But since the treble is increased and the bass is increased, it is very V-shaped. The mids are suffering a little bit here, but not to the extent where they are extremely recessed or where they're like dissatisfactory in any way. But they are still not as good quality as the bass and the treble is. You are getting good detail, and it is still present in the track, but it sounds a little bit boring. The vocals sound a little bit flat instruments. They come across well if they're in the higher notes for where they go into treble, but when they go into like the mid-range, like in the middle of the mid-range, it gets a little bit flat. Overall, I'd say the mid-range is average in the price category. The reason I'm I have a complaints with the mid-range because the bass and the treble are better than most things in this price category. So hearing the mid-range, it's a little bit of a disappointment here, but it's still good quality. You get good detail. It doesn't have a particular note weight issue. It has good note weight. It's not thin in any way, but it just sounds a little bit boring, a little bit lifeless. I think that the mid-range could use a little bit more energy. It kind of reminds me of the Performer 5. If you saw my review on that, it was fine, but it sounded a little bit boring in the mid-range. And it's the same way for me here. I think the vocals could use a little bit more energy. But they do still sound natural, but it just sounds a little bit flat. Now let's go into the treble. This is where these IEMs really took me by surprise. The treble on these IEMs is top-notch. 100% incredible treble. I'm really willing to say that this is treble that competes with EST treble. It has a really EST-like timbre to it, where it's really well extended without getting sibilant whatsoever. It was shocking. Just listening when I'm listening to track, when the treble comes in, just gorgeous detail and presentation. It's really prominent in the track, but never gets irritating and never gets like a sense of overemphasization. It's well emphasized, it's really present, but it's not sibilant in any way. It's got great control, yet it's still well extended, very detailed, and really excellent timbre in the treble. Honestly, this is the best treble you can find under $300, and it's some of the best under $500. The treble is something really to behold here in a $150 package. This is really amazing. And I think it's due to the microplanar. I'm seeing a lot of companies using microplanars as kind of a substitute, a cheaper substitute for EST drivers, where the upper treble is done by a microplanar. And it is really impressive. I think that they really did a great job on the treble on the Supermix 4. Really just no complaints in the treble. Some of the best treble I've heard. It reminds me a little bit of the EJ07, but with more extension. So really just highest praises to the treble, which is why I really can recommend this set overall, just based on, just based on the treble performance alone is enough for me to recommend this set. Now, let's talk about soundstage and imaging and timbre. Soundstage wise, these are average in terms of soundstage. Not bad at all around here. Can you find better soundstage in this price range? Yes. Is it disappointing soundstage? No. It is decent soundstage for the price. Absolutely no qualms with that over there. Imaging wise, you get good imaging, especially in the treble. Really good imaging overall. No problems with that as well. But as I said before, with the mid-range, it does sound a little bit flat and just a little bit two-dimensional also in the treble. In the mid-range, in the mid-range. Now going to timbre. Timbre, these sound very natural. I'm going to bring in the quintet for comparisons just now. And that's what I noticed the most about these, is that even though it has so many different types of drivers and so many drivers in this low price range, it still managed to keep a timbre that was cohesive and natural sounding, which is very impressive in this price range. So yeah, now let's bring in the quintet here for comparison here. The reason I bring the quintet, even though it is $220 compared to $150, is a lot of people are going to say these are, competitors in the sense where they both have a lot of different drivers for their price range. Even though yeah, just overall, when the Quintet first came out, it was very impressive. It still is very impressive for its price range. And it just has it's just the driver types are relatively similar. I believe this also has a microplanar, BA, dynamic, and I think it also has a piezo. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, let's talk about how these two compare. Now, does the Simgot, the Supermix 4, make it so that this is now obsolete? No. In my opinion, it's still a great buy if you buy a Quintet. I think the Quintet is an excellent set that has its pros over the Supermix 4. In terms of bass, I think the bass quality of the Quintet is a little bit better than it is on the Supermix. It's not a huge difference, but you do get a little bit more of that tactility in the Quintet. You get a bit more punch, and it is a little bit less emphasized, and I think which is a better thing. I think it is a little bit more balanced in the track. Overall, I think the bass is better done in the Quintet. You do get more bass in the Supermix 4, so if you're a bass head, you want that heavy amounts of bass. You want it to really show a high emphasis. I think that the Supermix 4, I guess, may be more for you, but I think the Quintet still has a good emphasis in the bass without being overpowering in the track. Not saying the Supermix 4 is necessarily overpowering, but it's still a little bit more than I would have liked. Quintet does a perfect job in terms of the quantity of the bass, and it does have a little bit better quality. In terms of the mid-range, that's where it's a toss-up, actually. I did say I was disappointed in the Supermix's mid-range in comparison to the treble and bass. It sounds more natural on the Supermix 4. The Quintet has a little bit more liveliness in the vocals and the mid-range. There is a more energy in the upper mids, which I like. A little bit more body in the mid-range, but it also has a little bit more of what's it called? The timbre is a little bit more metallic. It sounds a little bit more unnatural. It's more natural on the Supermix 4. The mid-range, even though it is a little bit flatter, you do get a little bit of a metallic tinge in the mid-range in the Quintet. And I think that the Supermix 4 does a better job bringing all of the drivers together in a more natural sound overall in all of the frequencies, but especially in the mid-range, you're not going to get any metallic sounding tinge or timbre on the Supermix 4, where I do notice a little bit of metallic timbre in the Quintet in comparison. Now, in terms of treble, I think the Supermix 4 completely destroys the Quintet in terms of treble, which is crazy because the Quintet has good treble. Quintet has excellent treble, but I think the Quintet's treble doesn't sound as clean, it doesn't sound as clear, and doesn't have that EST-like timbre like the Supermix 4 does. Anyway, that's in terms of the frequencies. Let's talk about presentation. Sound stage-wise, you're getting a wider stage on the Quintet. It's by a decent amount. I'd say the soundstage on the Supermix 4 here is like here, and on the Quintet it's like here, which I think is a decent amount in terms of IEMs. You're getting quite a bit more stage on the Quintet. But in terms of imaging, I think imaging is around the same, but maybe leans more towards the Supermix 4 having a little bit better imaging. Just because it has that closer stage, I think that helps it in terms of getting that edge in the imaging than the Quintet. Now let's talk about, we already talked about timbre. I think the timbre is better on the Supermix 4. Overall, I think they're both great options in a relatively similar price bracket. I think, though, you're getting a better value with the Supermix 4. I think the Supermix 4 is probably the best value you can get overall in the under $200 price category, and maybe in the under $250. I think that once you get to $300, you have things like the Da Vinci and like the Kinera Khodur that are a bit better than these in most of the frequencies overall. I think that if you want to check out review on that, check out those reviews on my channel. But I think that in the under $200 price bracket and at the under $150 price bracket, these are uncontested as the best IEMs you can get there. Overall, I am very impressed by this set of IEMs, and especially since it seems to be Simgot's most recent and pretty new foray into a more bass-heavy sound signature compared to their EA500LM and their EW200 IEMs in their more budget categories. Overall, I can absolutely recommend the Supermix 4 in the under $200 price bracket, and yeah, that's about it. See ya.